Now I'd like to introduce our next inductee in tonight's program. Dee Sarno is a friend to everyone here in this room. Dee has demonstrated what a true community leader can and should be. Through her career in the arts and as a volunteer, she has become a pillar in our community. Dee has brought the arts to the forefront of the minds of Saratogians, served on many boards, and been seen in countless volunteer activities to support the city of Saratoga Springs. Tonight, she's going to be interviewed by Mary Caroline Powers. Mary's called Saratoga Springs home since 1973, and she's well known for her career in journalism. She's been on television, on radio, worked in newspapers, magazines, and since the year 2000 has worked for Empire State College, where today she's the Vice President for Communications and Government Affairs, or Relations. So I'd like you all to please help me welcome Dee Sarno and Mary Caroline Powers.
Okay, thank you very much. Ooh, sound.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
We're just going to take a minute, not make a big deal out of this, but explain why my friend Dolores is with a cane today.
Oh.
She took a heck of a fall. How many weeks ago?
3 months in October.
Down an entire set of stairs.
Right.
And then some.
But I'm
spent a lot of time in the hospital and is recovering from a concussion, and we are very lucky that she is here with us tonight, I think.
Yeah.
So, 3 cheers for Dee.
Yay, that's right. It's all good. It's all good.
So, Dee and I we've known each other a long time. We had been members of the Soroptimist Women's Service Organization in town for a bazillion years. She says I'm the only person who calls her Dolores.
This is true.
And yet, we spent a nice Sunday afternoon together, and I found out things about her I did not know. And I think it's real interesting, the story that she brings to the table, and how this singular human being has come from being a country kid in North Shore Hills, is that it? Long Island, looking at potato patches and rows of corn, to someone who has genuinely distinguished herself as a leader in the arts, not just in this community, but across the state of New York. So, want to get started?
Absolutely.
Okay. As Jamie mentioned, Dee has volunteered broadly across the community. Just to name a couple of specific, she served on the boards of BOCES Art and Education Council, Homemade Theater, Capital Area Committee for the Regional Approach to Arts and Education, the New York State Partners for Arts Education, Caffe Lena, Saratoga Springs Heritage Area Program, the Saratoga NAACP, SaratogaArtsFest, and the Performing Arts Center Board, just to name a few. As I mentioned, she started out in Long Island, and worked her way into a love of theater. But how she got there is a fascinating story. There were some very important people in your early life who got you there. Want to start with Grandpa?
Yeah, I think we'll start. Actually, I wasn't living on the potato farm that she talked about. I grew up in rural Long Island. It was very, very rural at that time, and we were in a small community, and across the street from us was this huge farm. And my dad had a horse there, and he used to ride it and bring it around, and we could pick, rhubarb and potatoes and corn and everything like that, but I lived in a regular house. I didn't live in a farmhouse. But it was a great town, and it was very rural. But by the time I left that town, it had become one of those really suburban, huge metropolises, and that little farm road was a 4-lane highway. So it kind of changed my perspective on a lot of things, but I still have those little girl roots, I think. Mary talked about my grandfather. Now, my grandfather left a big impression on me, and I never met him. I never knew him. He died quite young. But he I had pictures with my grandfather and Enrico Caruso. My grandfather was enamored of the opera, just loved the opera. And he named 4 daughters, all after heroines in the opera. I had an Aunt Margaret, I had an Aunt Norma, I had an Aunt Carmen, and my mother was Aida. So that had, I think, a little bit of influence on me, and it was, my family loved music. Aunt Margaret played the piano, and we would sing and around the piano all the time. So that kind of instilled, I guess, my love for music. But my real pivotal moment in life, which Mary Caroline alluded to, was in the 5th grade. And my teacher's name was Miss Guilfoyle. And I'll never forget Miss Guilfoyle because she was really a terrific teacher. But at that time, and some of my friends in this room know this story, I was very shy, very retiring, and I couldn't talk to save my soul. I just couldn't.
This is Dee Sarno.
Right, exactly, but I had no self-confidence. I was just kind of a mess, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, Miss Guilfoyle always had a 5th grade play, and she insisted that everybody in the class be part of the play. So, and she insisted that I would have a big part in the play, and I didn't want to be in it. The play was Polly Put the Kettle On, and so she said to me, "You're going to have the lead." And I thought, Polly? I'm going to be Polly? No, I was the kettle. So that was my first stage presence, and I have to tell you, kicking and screaming, they took me to the part, but I was the best sputtering, dancing, twirling kettle you ever saw. So that's
the face that launched 1,000 steps. You know, this is what did it.
That's it, I think. And really, theater was an important part of my life through high school. I didn't have a major part, again, for a long time. But in high school, the first time I really had a speaking part was in the night of January 16th, and I played a Southern maid. And it's funny how things come back to you. I can remember one of the lines. And there was Mr. Faulkner lying on the sidewalk, all smashed to pieces. There. Anyway, I did have fun, and I did enjoy theater my whole life. When I graduated from high school, I lived in my family. I was first generation. My father was born in Europe. My mother's family were all born in Italy, and it was at that time women didn't go to college in the family. The money for the college was for the men. So when I graduated from high school, I worked during the day, but I went to the Roslyn School of Dramatic Arts. So working during the day, going to school at night, and luckily I got some great opportunities for summer stock and community theater, and I really had a great time for quite a few years until I met this charming gentleman over here.
Mr. A.J.
Mr. A.J.
And together they had 3 children.
Right.
Dawn, Dee and A.J.'s daughter Dawn is here with her son Ryan,
Right.
one of Dee's 6 grandchildren.
Right.
Dawn is a teacher in Boston Spa.
Dina has a theater school in Buffalo, and Doug is an environmental engineer.
But before
we're going before?
and A.J. married,
Uh-huh.
you are looking at the woman who was Miss Mitchell Air Force Base. And I could say, you were a beauty queen. She said, no, I wasn't a beauty queen. Although I guess you had to look sort of okay. To be Miss Mitchell Air Force
Well, you
Base.
had to look passable. You had to have a talent.
And she was a song and dance and acting
Singer, right?
talent, right. So the two of them ended up in Syracuse because of AJ's employment. with
Right.
US
Well,
Postal
we
Service.
actually went to Roanoke first. We ended up in Roanoke, Virginia, and that's when I went back to school. I was lucky to go back to school. Got a degree in early childhood education, and while my kids were doing their homework, I was doing my homework. So it was great. And I taught for several years in Virginia, which was kind of set me in another path because I got very involved in thinking about integrating arts in education and using that as a segue into the curriculum.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And then when you landed in Syracuse, you got involved again in the arts with symphony,
Right. Syracuse Symphony, yeah.
But she also got involved with the ice cream industry.
Yes, I did. We had a couple of friends and myself decided we wanted to try something new, so we formed a little partnership, and we opened Triples, the ice cream place, in Marshall Square Mall, in the heart of Syracuse University. And then we became Doubles because one of the girls quit, and then we became single. And we only had one. I was the last man standing. But it was a great experience. We worked with the Small Business Bureau. We went to a lot of business shows. It was a great education for me in terms of business and finance and taxes and payroll and things like that, which eventually helped me in my final job.
So then AJ, I guess, decided to retire from the post office and open his own consulting business.
Right.
And you could have moved anywhere.
This is true.
And they came to Saratoga Springs.
Right.
Thank goodness. Now, part of the reason was Dawn and her sister, who were living in the region, right?
Right. Dawn had gotten married and left her mother.
But another part of the reason was a convention that AJ had attended previously.
Right.
And you were left behind in the holiday.
I was. We had come up for a convention. It was in July in Saratoga Springs, most heavenly place. And I was at the Holiday Inn. And I was sitting at the pool, and these fabulous young girls with these thin bodies walked in, and they almost looked to me like they were on their toes. And they were ballerinas from New York City Ballet, and I actually had the opportunity to talk with them. And they told me about SPAC, and of course, that's where I ended up and for the rest of the vacation, the conference anyway. I was absolutely enthralled with ballet, and SPAC in general it's such a gorgeous place. And AJ and I had talked about relocating since, he was going into his own consulting business. And since my daughter was here and my other daughter was working on her master's, we just said, let's move to Saratoga Springs. And that's what we did.
And that was 87?
That was, 87, right.
87. So, your kids are growing up, they're going off to school, your husband's starting his own business, you get a part-time job at Skidmore College.
Oh yeah, right. I worked at Skidmore for 6 months. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but so that's why I stayed at Skidmore. I worked in financial aid for 6 months, and I met Scott Lyons. Scott Lyons, at that time, was the development director. Some of you might know of it, Scott Lyons. He was development director at Skidmore, and he wrote a play called Maybelline. And he was talking to me one day, and he says, Dee, we're going to do my play. We're going to talk to my play at Homemade Theater. And I said, where's Homemade Theater? Because I was new in the area. And he said, it's in the park. And he said, in fact, he says, I have to get a stage manager. I said, I can be your stage manager. So he says to me, what do you mean you can be my stage manager? I said, I love the theater. That's my thing. So we did his play. I was the stage manager. And he said to me, after it was all over, he said, you know something, Dee? I know of a part-time job that you might be interested in. So we talked about it, and he said that the Saratoga County Arts Council, under the auspices of the Chamber of Commerce, was looking for a part-time person.
And while this is not about me, I can tell you that when I moved here in 1973, the Arts Council consisted of a couple of classes in a big old building on Circular Street that you were afraid to walk up the stairs for fear they would collapse, and the only lighting was a bare bulb hanging in the hallway, and there were some light drawing classes. That was it. And from there, the chamber saw the value of this organization. It was beginning to fall apart. They pulled it back together and they found Dee. So that's really it's like the reincarnation of the Saratoga County, well, it was then the Saratoga Arts Council, it became the County Arts Council. Joe, do you remember the actual date that you folks, and this is when the chamber was still on Broadway.
Yes, yes.
They wouldn't let me near the arts.
Which was a wise
That was
decision.
true, that was true.
And Dee was basically running this reborn Saratoga County Arts Council out of the trunk of your car. You were hired 8 hours.
I was hired 8 hours a week, and actually the Chamber of Commerce is a fabulous chamber, and they have the best staff in the world. And so I needed a desk for when my 8 hours became 10 hours, it became 12 hours. For about a year I was at the chamber, but I never knew where I was going to sit. I had a revolving seat. So whoever was absent that day or whoever didn't need their seat that day, that's where I was. But I didn't have any, like office space, so I did. I kept all the registrations, the membership and everything, all at that point what we had accumulated in the trunk of my car. And it came with me, wherever.
But then it began to grow. Now, when she started, what did you tell me? You had 50 members?
They had 50 members and $7,000 in the bank to pay part of my salary.
And then it started to grow. And we moved across the street into that lovely old building that I think John Frank is now in.
Right. Yeah, Larry Hamilton owned it. Yeah.
And you were up on the
we were up on the third floor, and at that time it was the Empire State Crafts Alliance who had the whole office. So we just had a tiny little office. Well, I should say it was me. But it was a tiny little office, and it was that little, like the turret up on the top, and it was just really lovely, and I had a gorgeous view of Broadway. And downstairs in the hall, there was like just a very small hall, and a wall this way and a wall that way, and that became our first Art in Public Places exhibit. We had 6 pictures down there. Do you remember that, Jay? I don't know if Jay was on the board yet. Were you? All right. Anyway, so that was our first Art in Public Places.
And then the first grant came in. It turns out that among her many talents, she writes a grant.
Well, that's actually the chamber, in their wisdom. That's the reason they hired somebody, because they wanted to have a staff person, because we couldn't get the grant. And it was called a Jump Start grant. And I remember it was $5,000. And I wrote the grant, we got the grant, and you would have thought they gave me $100,000. I was so excited. But at that point, that grant just gave us the jump start that we needed. And the Arts Council continued to get many grants after that. Arts and education grants for the schools, county grants for art organizations across, not-for-profit art organizations across the county. And our membership started to grow. And our budget started to grow, and eventually I hired another part-time person, and I became full-time, obviously.
And so the need for space started to grow.
Right.
And then I'm sure everyone in this room remembers the big push to build a new library and the question, what's going to happen to the old library building? Dee Sarno had an answer.
Well, Dee Sarno, her volunteers and her board of directors, who were so, and there's some of them here, some of them that were way back when, were very instrumental in what we were doing. What happened was, as many of you might know, the former library building was kind of up for sale. And luckily, Saratoga got that gorgeous new library that we have now. This was about in 1996, and the Fourth Judicial Court System wanted to go in there. And we felt strongly that that building needed to be an open building, a building for the community. It had been a library all its life, and it should remain some kind of a facility for the community. So, excuse me. So our board of directors and myself, we decided that we would lobby for the old library building. And we didn't have much success in the beginning. In fact, I can remember, and Jay Portnoy's here, they told us, first of all, they said, you don't have any staff, you have one and a quarter person, you've never had a capital campaign, you don't have any programs, you don't have any space, how do you think you're going to do all this? So for 2 years, we worked on a finance plan, an operational plan, programming plan, and Jay and I and Harry Bucefero, is Harry here? Hi, Harry. Harry, we took trips all around New York State to different art centers and to see what they were doing, what their programs were, what their budgets were, how do they get their money, what kind of grants do they write, and we started what we called our dog and pony show. We had a PowerPoint presentation that we took to the chamber, to the Kiwanis, to the Rotary Club, to schools, to the banks, to say, hey, we've got this great idea and we would love your support.
But then they had to go to the city council.
Yeah. And the city council was not for it at all. They didn't think we could ever do it. We had to raise $500,000 to renovate the building. And so we just kept working on it and working on it and working on it. And they were so sick of seeing us at council meetings that they said, okay, let's make a deal. So, and we did.
Now, the Arts Council didn't actually buy the building,
No.
correct?
No. When we first went in, we were paying $1,000 a month, and we had to renovate the building. So actually, it was a very interesting time because we had to renovate, we had to raise money, we had to start programs, workshops, fill the space. At that time, I have to say, John Hughes, the architect, was wonderful because he had a plan for us to renovate the building, and that was so helpful to get us started. We also had some very generous supporters that gave us operating support for 3 years to keep, to get us going. We had a myriad of volunteers who were down at the Art Center. In fact, Charlie DeSanto was here, and he was painting walls with Caffe. I thought, did I see Charlie? Yeah, he and Caffe were painting the walls downstairs. I mean, in the beginning, it was a really grassroots organization, really, and the whole process of getting into the building and putting everything together was kind of overwhelming, actually. But we were tenacious.
So that certainly has got to count among your proudest accomplishments.
Yeah, I would say so. Accomplishments can be little and they can be big. That actually was maybe our biggest accomplishment at that time. But I think things happened when we finally got into that space that gave us recognition so that we had really accomplished something. But even before that, the Arts Council, even though it was very small, one of my greatest memories is hosting the Common Ground Conference, and that's New York City, New York City. I was going to the Alliance of New York State's Arts Councils and New York Arts Councils, right? It worked with NYSCA, New York State. No, I'm sorry. I have to say that that little fall down the steps affected my head just a wee bit, and I'm still, not that I'm, every once in a while I forget certain words, but I'm okay. So anyway, they needed a place to hold this state conference, and they brought in 500 people, artists and teachers, and it was just phenomenal. And they came here and had their convention, and they loved Saratoga so much, they did something they never had done before. They asked us to host the second year. And that was a big accomplishment. That was before we got into the Arts Center. We only had the 2 staff people. So, and I have to say, this community, we used Skidmore space, we used the casino, we used space all around, and everybody, the city center, and everybody in this community was so generous and so incredible. So that's one of the experiences that stands out to me, that they loved this town and they were so amazed all the things, the great spaces we had and all the things we could do. So that was a great time.
And during your tenure there, were there any particular programs that are very close to your heart?
Obviously the arts and education programs, the grants that we got into the schools, and the teachers and artists that brought those programs to the students. And Nancy Sharples, I think I saw her here. Nancy is a weaver. Nancy used to do a program about the tapestry in the castles, and she brought the social studies so vivid to the kids by explaining about the tapestry and why they used it in castles. And those kids, they remembered that social studies class forever. So it's very exciting to me, because to get kids involved and making education come alive to them is a wonderful thing. So our arts and education grants and our county grants. And I remember one Caffe Lena Spencer. Well, the Arts Council was only about 2 years old then, and we gave her our art award, a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I don't know, many of you knew Lena Spencer, and you know the cafe, and you know the amazing artists that came there. Annie DeFranco, Arlo Guthrie, Don McLean. There was just so many people there that she nurtured. But we had an award ceremony for her. She lived at the cafe, and we asked her what she would need, and what she wanted was a warm sweater. And I thought, this woman was so amazing, and she got an award from Skidmore College about a year before we gave her our award, and 2 months after we gave her our award, she had passed away. So I felt so fortunate to meet her, to know her, and she gave her life to that cafe. So that was a great experience.
But then you made the decision to retire.
Yes. Before I say that, you were saying about things that we were proud of. One other thing, and I think this is really, really, really important. The Saratoga County Arts Council in 1996, we got an award from New York State for advancing cultural development in New York State. Now, this was a small arts council in a community of about 25,000, and to get this award was really something. and we got the award in Lincoln Center, and we took a busload of people down to the city and got our award. And we were there with Kitty Carlisle. Hart was there, and maybe some of you don't know her, but she was really big in the arts at that time, and some other really wonderful, famous artists and dancers and everything. And here we were, you know, getting this award in Lincoln Center. So that was totally amazing experience.
Really put Saratoga's art.
Yeah, it did, and it was just great. Yeah.
Okay,
Retirement. Yeah. Several reasons I think I retired. I had been with the Arts Council for almost 22 years. You know, when you're working 24/7 like that in a building, and through the years you're writing grants, you're worrying about budgets, you're dealing with finances day to day, and you're trying to figure out new programming. You've got classes, you've got workshops, and I think I finally got to the point that I needed a change. Partly, I was way above retirement age at that time, and I really felt like it was time for some new faces, new people, and I found somebody that would continue the Arts Center and keep it vibrant and healthy, and serving the community. And I felt that I still had a lot of life left, and I could go on and do some other things.
when you start, it's not like that, it doesn't feel like it is, it doesn't sound like it is. Yeah. I somehow jostled that. Sorry, folks. So when you started, $7,000, 50 members.
Right.
When you retired,
When I retired, we had 1,000 members, and our budget was $450,000.
so obviously, you found the key to keeping and alerting people to the importance of the arts and then keeping them vibrant. What has to happen in this city to keep that going?
You know, this city has had arts in it forever, really. I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it last night, and through the 1800s and the 1900s, with the big hotels that were here, people used to come up for the spring water, and wealthy people were here all the time. So when they came to the Grand Hotel and what's the other one? The New York State, the United States Hotel, right? They used to go to the mineral baths, but they needed entertainment too, so that people they had, depending on the time period, but I mean Chauncey Elliott, Lillian Russell. There was see, now this is where my little brain is not working for me right now. I mean, Victor Herbert, Sophie Tucker, Bing Crosby. I mean, the stars and the people that were here all the time. It was amazing. The Spa Little Theater from the 1940s to the 1960s had a wonderful theater group, and they were fabulous. You know, they had these wonderful plays. Actors came from all over the region, and there's a great little PS on that one. George, David Hyde Pierce's father, George, was one of those actors, and he would take David to the theater all the time, and that's where David Hyde Pierce got his feeling about the theater. So there has been the arts all through the years, but then, you know, there came a time in the 1950s, the end of the 50s and the 60s, where things were bad, and then Saratoga came alive again with the Saratoga Performing Arts Center, the most fabulous space. I love it. And then it dipped a little bit again when I got here in the 80s. So, and I find that so exciting that what we the Arts Council contributed to the community during that time and kind of made this little hub downtown for the community. So I see the arts thriving in Saratoga always, and I think it'll thrive because of the dancers, the singers, the musicians, the actors, the people who care about the arts who come here. But to keep them going, you need somebody with a vision that wants to work and keep them going, and you also need patrons, because you need financial support. The arts have always been supported to some degree. So I feel that the arts will always be alive and well in Saratoga, because Saratoga Springs that kind of community, that people will support it, and you'll always have the wonderful volunteers that you've got here too, that they're great.
But make no mistake about it, Dee Sarno is not leaving the art scene. Even though she's retired, she has accepted a very major assignment in retirement. You want to talk about your future in the arts now?
Oh, well, no, I guess I'm chair-elect for the Board of Directors for SaratogaArtsFest, and Marie Glotzbach is stepping down, and so I will be taking over that, but that is a well-oiled machine. So they are great, they are wonderful, and I'm feeling very fortunate that, that will be a great experience for me. I would like to just say one thing. Saratoga Springs has a motto, okay? It's art, history, and horses. What I want to happen in my retirement, it's going to be horses, history, I'm sorry, is that right? Art, no, it's not arts. Health, history, and horses. Health, history, and horses, and the arts. So Joe, can you talk to the Chamber of Commerce and see what you can do about that?
Well, he retired too, you know. So making arts is important to this city's identity.
Oh, absolutely.
As
absolutely.
Those other three H's.
Yes,
Those
absolutely.
3 H's.
Yes.
Okay. Well, on that note, we wanted to turn the opportunity to talk to Dee over to you. So we'd be happy to field any questions for her, if you have any.
Probably I talk so much, you don't have any questions.
Yes.
Or when, just a point of interesting history. When we were going to try to secure the old library, and instead of turning it into a warrant for judges and lawyers, the Saratoga did run a poll asking the public what they thought of the possibility of having it either as an art center or as having the judicial district run it. And I think this was really the key, because the city council does pay attention. It was a small poll, it was only 52 people, but of it, 48 said an art center, 3 said they didn't care, and 1 person said to have it for the judges.
Right.
And of course, that even with a small sample, that's a bit overwhelming. But I was so bored that I found out who that 1 person was. I called them up, and she said, well, I didn't want to, as a taxpayer, to have to pay for capital improvements. And I said it would come out the same thing. Either the district would pay for it or the Arts Council would pay for it, but the taxpayers would not directly pay for it. She said, oh, well, then count me neutral. So at least I could say that it turned out to be unanimous.
Any other comments, questions?
What would you say was a low point as you were developing it initially? Was there a
Low point? Yeah, what, you mean when we were lobbying for the building? Yeah. I think we, because when we were going around to all the different organizations and they were listening to us and they said, yeah, that's very nice, but they never really, nobody gave us that much encouragement, I don't think. So, but I think our volunteers and everybody wouldn't let us give up, so we just kind of kept on going. I don't think we went really way down low. I don't remember. Do you remember? Maybe you remember better than I do, John.
I just remember the rent bill.
that was a little discouraging, right? But we did negotiate.
Not the city really, it was only that side.
Yeah.
I just want to say that even though she worked very hard for a building, Dee has never been a person who needed an edifice because she still operates out of the back of her trunk for many of her organizations. And I think she just wouldn't know what to do without that trunk.
You're right. You're right.
The first time I met her on Broadway, that's exactly what she was doing. I had the trunk open, and she was operating out of the back of her trunk, and she still does.
I know, that's true.
I just want to say that at a time when Lee Signor and I were discovering the oral history that was out there on the west side, we didn't know where we would be going with it. But we did go and talk to Dee about possibilities because we heard about the grant. Well, we applied for one. We received great encouragement from Dee. Yes, go ahead and apply. There is a committee. They decide who will get grants, and it can be from anywhere. And our grant went for an exhibit here in the casino, in the Historical Society. And it was because of the encouragement we got from Dee, but it didn't end there. And a few years ago, we did 3 West Side festivals, 4 of them, and Dee was part of them, and she was able to get a grant so that we could get people together again to tell the stories of the West Side. And she provided a tent for the storytellers, and people got together and shared fabulous memories. So Dee, I want to thank you for all the help and encouragement.
Well, thank
always.
you. You know, something I have that you talked about, that is something that's exciting, and I'm going to share this with you, because what's going to happen from that. We did the history of the Italians, the African Americans, and the Irish, and one each year. And we did a lot of research, and we took a lot of pictures. We got pictures from the Bolster collection and everything. But I've got that whole collection from the grant, and that's all going to go to the over on the west side in the Elks Club upstairs. There's going to be a permanent exhibit on the east side. Once they get finished, that whole series is going to go up. And that was another thing that I was really proud of, the Folk Arts Grant. That was really great. Thank you for mentioning that, because I am excited about that, and that's going to happen. So that's what I'm going to work on too in my retirement. Okay. Yes.
It's not in her trunk. It occupies a big part of our house.
This is true too.
As a volunteer at the Art Center for many, many years, I want you to know not only is she talented as a leader, but she doesn't know how to delegate as well as we all thought as a volunteer. She was doing everything from vacuuming, serving food, making food. I mean, she was into everything you could possibly think of, and she made us volunteers think we were so important that they couldn't exist without her. And that's why there were always so many volunteers there. And I think you deserve another star for being the best leader for volunteers.
Yeah, but you know what? Volunteers are the heartblood of any not-for-profit organization, and they could never do without them. And we could have never accomplished what we did.
I'd like to bring up something else that was very important to me when I returned to Saratoga, and that was Diversity Day. It was at the Arts Council that Diversity Day found its home, and I really appreciate that you opened up the Arts Council to that event for was it 2 or 3 years?
Yes.
that it existed, and when the core of people who worked on that event dissipated, you still gave a lot of energy and support to the notion of diversity, and I really appreciate that. I've loved working with you. You're just an absolute dynamo powerhouse, and I really appreciate everything that you've done in the community.
Thank you. And actually, that's another one of my, in my retirement, Solomon Northrop Day, which is, I just want to mention that it's going to be very exciting this year because the Saratoga Reads book selection is 10 Years a Slave, the story of Solomon Northrop. So,
Guess who she's bringing to town?
no, Johnny's bringing them. No, Brad Pitt's not coming. But he's producing, he's directing the movie. So you never know. What is it that you never know. This is true.
Are there any other questions? All right, well,
You have a question? No, I'm looking at you, honey.
I'd just like to personally say thank you so much for all your kind remarks about my friend Dolores. And on behalf of this entire community, please accept our grateful thanks for all you've done for us, and warmest congratulations
Well,
on being elected to the Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I really am very delighted with this. I thank the community. It's a wonderful place to live, and I thank you for letting me be part of this community, because I've never lived any place as long as we've lived in Saratoga Springs, and you're all dear to me, all the volunteers, all the people I work with, and I will continue to stay involved with this wonderful community that I love. So there you go. It makes me very happy. Okay. Thank you.